Hey everyone, welcome to the channel ChessPage. Today I will introduce you to the world of chess. In this video I will explain you everything you need to learn so that you can win at chess games and dominate it as a beginner. Starting with the chessboard. The chessboard is an 8 by 8 board which you are seeing. It has a total of 64 squares. So it has many files like the 8 files like the A file, B file, C file, and also 8 ranks which are as first rank, second rank, third rank, etc. So all the 64 squares on the chessboard have names like A1, which means it is on the A file and the A first rank, C3, which means is on the third rank and the C file, etc. Now let me tell you how the board is set up. So on the second rank for white and seventh rank for black are the pawns. Then on the A files are the rook, A and H files are the rook, B and G files are the knights or the horses, C and F files are the bishops, D files are the queens, and last the E files are the kings. So all the pieces except the pawns are at the first rank for white and eighth rank for black. Now let me tell you how the pieces move. So I have cut short the board so that you can easily know how the pieces move. Starting with the pawns. If the pawns haven't moved yet, it can move two squares, and after that it only moves one square. It can also move one square from the starting if we want to move it. Now the pawn doesn't captures how it moves. For example, the pawn captures the pawn captures diagonally, not by moving forward. There is a special rule for pawns, which is known as an en passant. For example, if an opponent pawn or even you move a pawn two steps and an opponent pawn or your pawn is just right next to you, it can capture the other pawn. For example, here we have captured the black's pawn. Now there is one more rule, one more special rule uh, for pawns, which is known as promotion. When the pawn reaches the other side of the board, for example, for white the eighth rank and for black the first rank, then it can promote into the four pieces: queen, knight or horses, rooks, and bishops. It can promote in any of the piece, even if you have the corresponding number. For example, you already have one queen, still you can promote into another queen. Now the pawn is worth 1 point. Now let me tell you how do the knights move. The knights move in an L shape. This is also shown in the green dots, like knight to e5. The knight has moved in an L shape from knight to f3 to knight to e5. It also captures in the same way. The knight is a minor piece and is worth 3 points. Next comes the bishop. The bishops moves diagonally in all sides. For example, in this case, it moves diagonally in this side. Now let's suppose we move the bishop to f4. Random move. Then see, we can move the bishop in all of these directions diagonally. It also captures in the same way. For example, now it captures the pawn diagonally. Next comes the bishop is also a minor piece and it is also worth 3 points. Next comes the rook, which is worth 5 points. It moves in all directions, up, down, left, and right. For example, it moves up. It has moved in this direction forward, forward. It also captures in the same way. For example, the rook has captured the pawn by going left. The rook is worth 5 points. Next comes the queen, which is a mixture of the bishop and the rook. Even though the bishop and the rook combines and forms 8 points, which is 5 points for the rook and 3 points for the bishop, still the queen is worth 9 points. For example, it also captures in this way, like you have seen here. Now comes towards the last piece, which is the king. The king is the most important piece of the board. It can't be captured and only be threatened. King moves one square in all direction. It also has a special move which is known as castling. I will show you it later on. I can't show you right now as the rook has to be at h1. And so the king moves one step everywhere, one step in all directions. Now when the king is threatened to be captured, it is known as a check. For example, this is a check as the king is threatened to be captured by the rook. Ne- Next, if the king if the king is in check and if the king is given check and it has no and it can't block the check or escape from the check or even capture the piece which is giving check, then the king is in checkmate and the opponent has won the game. For example, here white has won the game as it has checkmated the black king with the by giving check from the king. Now you have known how the pieces move, but how to even play a game. For this is also an sample. I have cutted pieces. So first we have to check that if any of our pieces are attacked. For now, if you carefully observe, no, none of our pieces are attacked. Now we have to see which pieces can we capture. Capturing, if we threaten to capture a piece, it is known as an attack. So here the queen can capture the pawn, but if but the pawn if the queen captures the rook can also capture the queen, which means that the rook is defending the pawn. And if we do this is an trade when we this is an trade when we capture a piece and the and piece which captures another piece is captured by the opponent. This is a trade. So here we have traded a queen which is worth 9 points for a pawn which is worth only 1 point. So here the black has an the black has a good trade. Black has a good trade as it has won 8 points of material as shown here as 8. And it is a bad trade for white. So white will not do this. Next next is any of our pieces attacking a piece. Yes, our bishop is attacking the knight. We cut the knight, the bishop can also cut our bishop, but both are worth 3 points, so that means this is an equal trade. Now, as this trade has happened, now let's see, is any of our opponent pieces attacking our pieces? Yes, the bishop is attacking our rook. So we have to, and even if our rook is defending, if let's just play this, the bishop captures the rook and we capture the bishop. The opponent has won 2 points of material. So this is not a good trade for us. So can we move our rook so that we threaten another piece? Yes, we can move our rook to e1 to threaten the so that we threaten to capture the queen. Now the queen has to move. Let's suppose the queen moves here. Can we attack any of the pieces? In are we attacking are any of the opponent pieces attacking our piece? No, because even though the queen is attacking our knight, we can capture the queen, and this is a fair trade for us as we won points of material. And is any of our pieces attack piece? No. So now we can either look to attack and piece, or we can either look for we can also look for checks. For example, here we can move our queen to 4 to give a check to the queen. Sorry, to give a check to the opponent's king. And now let's suppose the opponent block the rook with the blocks the check with by moving the rook to f7. Now, even though we are attacking the rook, it is being defended by both the queen and the king. This is how we should play a this is how we should play a game. Play a game. Now, our main motto is to checkmate the opponent queen. So next, I will be telling about that only. So here we can give checks like e5 or c8, but check, which means so that means we are threatening the king, and now the king has to move. But is there any check? But is there any check that the king can't block, capture the checking piece, or escape? Yes, there is, which is queen to f8 checkmate. Now the king can't move anywhere, and the piece which is checking the king can't be captured, nor the check can be blocked by another piece. So this means that the black king has been checkmated, and we have won, and white has won the game. Now let me tell you about one more thing, which is known as draws. A draw is when the opponent or we are not in check, but the opponent or us, whoever's turn it is, doesn't have a legal move. For example, if white plays queen to f7, the king doesn't have any legal moves. The black doesn't have any legal moves, but is also not in check. This means that that the game has been drawn. Now let me tell you about some of the opening principles. Starting that you should try to capture the center, meaning placing your pieces, usually the pawns. For example, you can play pawn to e4, which captures in real two squares of the center, not one, as now your opponent can't move d4 or else. Even though its queen is out, but now you can develop pieces and attack the queen. When you develop pieces and attack something, even for the opponent, then it is called an tempo. You have gained the tempo, now the opponent have to defend its queen. For example, if he moves its queen here, you if its queen is moved here, you can develop with another tempo. It then the queen, let's suppose, moves here, you can develop one more tempo. The queen, let's suppose, move here. For now, you can develop a tempo, but you can play this move so that you can play a tempo. So these are all the different things. So now your opponent can't play d5. So for now, for telling you the how to develop and do it's something in the opening, the opponent will just play some random moves. For now, knight to a6 and back to b8. You play d4, knight to b8. In real here, I can also tell you that you now own the whole center, meaning that no piece can come or else this will happen. And even if he moves pawn to d5, you will just start gaining tempos like I told you earlier. So your opponent plays random moves. Now your task is to develop a knight. Develop your knights, then the bishop, then castle, queen. and then rook comes. So developing usually means keeping your pieces in a way so that they interact with more pieces, which means attack or defend more pieces. For example, for example, let's suppose this. Now your knight is better than this knight because this knight only covers this square. It doesn't cover this square because you can easily capture. But your knight covers many squares. This also defends this knight. It controls all its square and it defends everything except the king because the king can't be defended as it can't be captured. So now you develop your other knight. Random move. Now you have to develop your bishop. So the best square for the light squared bishop if you play e4 first, because in a normal game your pawn will usually be at d3 not d4. So before playing d3 you should usually play your bishop here, which is bishop to c4. Even though this bishop to b5 is also a good move. For now let's just suppose we play bishop to c4. Random move. Bishop to f4. Now you can play this bishop anywhere you want to except this square, or else you'll get nothing in return for a bishop. f4. Now you castle. The opponent plays another random move, and then you move your queen here, anywhere except except the last rank. Let's just suppose you played queen to d3. Now your rooks are connected. First, castling is. So I didn't tell you castling. Sorry, castling is this. When you put your king just beside your rook, you can also do this queen side in this way. This is queen side castling when the king comes to c1 and your rook to d1. Now your rooks are connected and you have entered the middle game and your opening is finished. Now you can just easily attack and do many things. But now let me tell you how to play a legit game. You can play both e4 also, e4 also, just sorry, and d4 also. But for now, let's just suppose you played e4. The most common move, as you can see with this blue arrow, is e5. Then you can play knight to f. Then you play the king's knight to f3. This attacks the pawn and you gain a tempo. So now your opponent plays knight to c6. This, which is the most common move, as now he also protects his pawn and has developed a piece. Now the most common moves are bishop to c4, b5, but we'll play knight c3. As I told you, the first thing to do is capture the center with one pawn and then develop your knights. Then the most common move is knight to f6. Now you can play bishop to c4 or even bishop to b5. But for now, let's suppose you played bishop to c4. This time you can't play. Now you can't play your bishop to d3, or else your pawn will not be able to go to d3. Your pawn going to d3 is important because let's just suppose you also developed your bishop, because if your pawn will not go for the f4, will not go to d3, your bishop will not gain a diagonal and will not be able to be developed. Now the most common move is b6. Now you can move your bishop to e3 also and g5 also, but I would recommend not placing your bishop to e3, or else. Now you have pawn doubled pawn. Doubled pawns are usually bad, as now one pawn single-handedly holds two your pawns and prevents them from going into the promotion square. Even if you, let's just suppose you played this, the opponent, instead of capturing, can just play normal moves, because if you capture this pawn, they also recapture and the same position comes. But this time you don't have that. This time both of you and your opponent doesn't have this d pawn. So that's why for now the best squares for the bishop are d2 and the best and g5. G5 is it d2. D2, even though many say that g5 is the best here, but your opponent can easily gain tempos like by playing h6, h6, and after that this move, and you have to move your bishop many times. You should try to not move one